Welcome to the Ending Sexploitation podcast, where we decode sexual harm and provide you with active solutions. I'm your host, Haley McNamara. Well, hello everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Ending Sexploitation podcast. Hello, Dani Pinter. How are you doing today?
Good. Always great to talk to you, Haley.
Great to talk to you too. It feels like it's been a little while. We've had a couple
Yeah.
weeks where we heard from Marcel last week, but I'm excited to dive in with you. There's so much to talk about today. I think we should start off with a couple of things that are in the headlines. One
Yeah.
being a kind of seemingly innocuous announcement from Spotify that they're introducing a new direct message feature, which I think most people maybe would hear that news and keep on scrolling and not really care. But we at the National Center on Sexual Exploitation care very much about this new feature that's rolling out. Did you see that news?
Yeah. I saw
Mhm.
that news. Well, I saw it from your excellent tweet, which I loved, where you're like, you're missing it, Spotify yet again. But yeah, I mean, we know that DMs is where a great bulk of exploitation happens online. So tell us, Haley, what's the big deal with this, and especially why is Spotify not prepared?
Yeah. So Spotify essentially said that later this week, users 16 and older will be able to message one on one on the app. And it is really, really concerning. Direct messages, like you said, they're a really high risk feature for abuse and grooming. You know, the internet is not in its infancy. We've seen the way that certain features play out on different platforms. And for example, on Instagram, we'll often talk about how we've met with survivors, young teenage survivors who were and groomed into sex trafficking on Instagram via direct message. And that's the same pattern that rolls out across pretty much every online platform that has direct messaging, especially where that direct messaging can include children. And so it's by its own nature a really high risk feature to have. Spotify is very strange also in the way that they roll this out, because I think that they're recognizing that there are risks to this feature by only rolling it out for users 16 years and older. That's because they know that this is a feature that can be used to groom and abuse children. And unfortunately, that's not good enough. They say users 16 and older, but actually, research shows that 16 to 17-year-olds are actually often at the highest risk for certain kinds of sexual abuse and exploitation, like sextortion cases, which often thrive by connection via direct message that escalates into a person requesting or sharing explicit photos, whether on the original site or in a secondary location. That's very often how these kinds of sextortion cases play out, is that contact will be made on Instagram, on Facebook, on Roblox, on whatever the platform, via public comments or direct messaging. A beginning of a relationship is formed, and then usually an abuser will encourage the person to move to a different platform where they can message more, whether that's WhatsApp or iMessages, where they can share images. I don't know yet whether the Spotify direct message includes the ability to share images. I don't think so, but even if not, the problem is that this is a place of contact that can be used for abusers to go on to extort victims. So it's just incredibly concerning and something that's not needed. I don't know who is asking for this feature. Um, and in general, Spotify is just not a platform that I trust when it comes to child protection. Did you know, Dani, that it took them 8 years just to add like pretty basic parental controls on Spotify?
Ugh, no,
8 years
that's so
of being a
upsetting.
global.
How hard would that, yeah, like how hard would that have been?
Yeah.
And you know what I think of when I think of this is like, h how many kids are gonna get blasted with, "This song makes me think of you, made this playlist for
Yeah.
you." It's gonna be so natural and, like, enticing, like, because it's a music platform, and I'm sure the point of the DM feature is to share things like music on the platform with users, like, that's, like, such an easy way to
Mhm.
disarm a teenager. Oh my gosh, it's like when we were kids, like the mixtape, but I mean, really,
Yes.
like, that it's gonna be immediately used for grooming.
Yeah. So it's really concerning. I think too, just to poke another hole in Spotify's claims, they say for users 16 and older, kids under the age of 16 who are on Spotify are gonna get access to this feature. It's not like
Well, how are they
Spotify is
even
using state of the art age verification. I think it's just
right,
you input your age when you sign up for the app, which is
right.
not sufficient. Yeah.
No, and especially if there's a feature only available to older teens, and that creates an incentive for kids to lie about their age.
Yeah. And I think too, I feel this is one of those cases where I feel so bad for parents because parents will are constantly coming to us asking, what app is safe? Which apps have the highest risk features? How can I choose? And then there are assuredly many parents who said, okay, well, we'll use Spotify because there's no social media factors on it. You're just listening to music. And then a little while ago, Spotify introduced comments. Spotify didn't always have comments. The comments are also a risky potential feature. But then the direct message feature really takes it to the next level. And how many busy parents have the time to see this news, recognize that the high risk, talk to their kids about it? I don't even know if Spotify's gonna have an ability for it to be disabled on a case by case basis. At least that hasn't been
Well, that's
discussed
the
openly by them.
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, that's the problem, right? Like you said, it took 8 years to get basic parental controls. Do we have any confidence they're gonna be anticipating all of those issues? And to your point, like, parents are constantly on the lookout, and Spotify has worked a certain way, and this just brings back to, right, big tech is always like, "Hey, it's on the parents to keep their kids safe." Well, Spotify never had direct messaging. Now all of a sudden they have direct messaging. How many parents even know that? They probably
Mhm.
lock their kids' devices way down, and they just want to let their kids listen to music, and they're gonna now they have no clue that now their kids can potentially be contacted by strange adults and groomed on Spotify. Like, that's impossible to keep up with. And combined with this, lack of sophistication or effort in Spotify's history of being
Mhm.
protecting kids, it's super concerning. And I just can't help but think too that because it's not going to be on anyone's radar, there's just and because Spotify is not vigilant, it is
Mhm.
so predictable that people are going to try to use this feature to exchange CSAM or other things because that's what they'll do, right? Nobody is watching Spotify DMs. They're going to start engaging with each other and linking. If they can't share photos, it's like they'll share links, right? And
Yes,
it'll just be
they'll share
another way to
links.
communicate with each other in a space they see as unmonitored, right? I mean,
Mhm.
do we have any answers? Is Spotify monitoring or moderating these DMs? Likely not.
Likely
So
not.
likely not. So that's those are some of the biggest concerns. And
Yeah.
I
And
just
also
also like and to that
go
point
on.
of people not expecting it. I wanted to tie that into, you know, we always when I like parents come to us, right, to your point, Haley, and the public generally, like people don't understand, I think, how quickly kids can get groomed and hurt
Yes.
on platforms you don't suspect. We worked with a young man who was originally groomed on Roblox, and the predator, convinced this child to get a phone that his parents didn't know about, that he was connecting to Wi-Fi to talk to this predator in the home. The parents end up finding out about that, getting rid of the phone, taking the kid out of school, and we're basically watching over this kid 24/7. And the only thing he could do was like play his Oculus video game. And the predator found him on Oculus and directed him to go to Twitter where they were DMing. And that's how he ultimately convinced the kid to sneak out at night, where he then kidnapped him, abused him, and took him
Wow.
across state lines like hundreds of miles away. So this is my point. Like people who think we're being kind of maybe silly or like, the sky is falling or exaggerating about Spotify, it's any internet space where adults can talk to kids and it's unmonitored. That is a key place where kids are at very high risk. Like that is a real concern.
Yes, absolutely. And actually, we do need to get into Roblox too. But before we do, I'll even add, the risks on Spotify might not be on parents' radar, but it's on predators' radar. Spotify's
Exactly.
already on abusers' radar. There have been cases, and now it's not common use, but there have been cases of predators who, well, there's been cases of in the thumbnails of on Spotify, hardcore images of pornography being shared via thumbnails on Spotify. Very strange. When people hear us say it, they don't believe us. We've gathered evidence and proof because it sounds so crazy and people are saying, "Well, wait, do you mean kind of a sensual album photo?"
Album
No, we're
cover, yeah.
talking, yeah, not talking album covers, not talking artists, like interpretive uh images,
Nude art or
hardcore,
something.
like
Yeah.
nude, like very explicit, showing penetration pornography images happening on Spotify thumbnails, including there have been cases of ones like that show suspected child sexual abuse material. And there have been cases of predators utilizing that and also changing the titles of playlists in order to communicate with children who they got in touch with, and then like changing the titles of playlists to communicate back and forth. It sounds so wild, but there have been multiple cases of kids. I think one was an 11-year-old girl who a predator just found her this way and abused her, and eventually found her offline and abused her. So it's certainly not that is certainly not an incredibly common form of abuse, but I'm just saying there's already predators are constantly trying to find out how they can use a platform to contact and harm kids. And Spotify's already on their radar as a place, like you said, that is not monitored very much because people think it's just a music listening platform. Why should we be alarmed at all? Mhm.
And that Spotify is not heavily moderating themselves, you know?
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. The other headline news that we definitely need to talk about is Roblox, which is, if anyone's on Twitter and if your algorithms like mine, you have been hearing a lot about this, but I think many people don't have my specific algorithm. So, Danny, how did this first come to your attention? The We've 'Cause Roblox has been on NCOSE's Dirty Dozen list for a couple of years. We know that it's a place where there's abuse and exploitation happening, but it seems like it's starting to become much more common knowledge. How did you first start
Yeah.
seeing this?
Yeah, it's definitely on my algorithm now for sure, Haley. But I first, like you said, Roblox was already on our radar. We'd been beating the drum for a while, and it felt like it wasn't getting the kind of attention I thought it would in the media. And then I first noticed a couple of big stories. Then that there was, and those stories were about some lawsuits are happening. So I noticed a couple of big stories about it seemed like dozens, maybe even hundreds of victims bringing lawsuits against Roblox, which I was super happy to see that these kids and parents were fighting back. And then within days, the Louisiana Attorney General filing a lawsuit against Roblox for the harms to kids in her state, and she was really blowing up Twitter on that and doing some great media interviews. And so that's how it came on my radar.
Yes, and we actually have, for those watching this on YouTube, a copy of this tweet from the AG. And she said, I just want to read this because I think it's really well said. She said, due to Roblox's lack of safety protocols, it endangers the safety of the children of Louisiana. Roblox is overrun with harmful content and child predators because it prioritizes user growth, revenue, and profits over child safety, which unfortunately is really similar to what we've seen at NCOSE as well. Like I said, they've been on the Dirty Dozen list for multiple years. For those not as familiar, Roblox is a video game system, and It looks like Legos. It looks very childlike. And kids love it. So many kids I know
Target
will who are
audience is
family
kids.
members. Yeah, they'll
And young
they love it.
kids, like, heavily marketed to we're not talking about like, Minecraft, for example, is I mean, all kids like that too, although in my estimation, heavily marketed to older kids, like high school, college people kids love
Mhm.
Minecraft. Roblox is like elementary, middle is their target. Do you agree, Haley?
Yes. And it's can be confusing to parents who don't really follow it because you can kind of enter different worlds and a lot of it is user generated. You can create your own game and then other users can enter into it. And for so long, their lack of moderation or care about online risks has been really significant. Like we were saying, the issue of direct messaging or chatting or friending of children has been a consistent theme, a consistent problem on Roblox. Even when they allowed, they limited some forms of direct message, there were so many loopholes and ways that you could get around that. If you entered into a public game, you could still chat with strangers. And then because there's so many of these games and kind of online environments where kids are playing were user generated, there are many that are have highly sexualized content and themes, and there have even been cases of children's avatars, their kind of game character being held down and having a simulated sexual assault played out on a child's avatar. There have been games revolving around sex and kind of and viewing uh simulated sex acts again between these Lego like characters, and also kids who were able to enter virtual strip clubs. Really, really disturbing problems that have, like I said, been going on for years. Some of what I think led to this becoming such a public outcry lately has been that there was a survivor actually of grooming and abuse on Roblox, he's going by the name of Schlep, who would post about this problem. He would go and report issues to law enforcement. And just through him posting about it, it generated a lot of interest online. And then, like you said, with the Louisiana AG speaking out that and bringing forward these lawsuits, it's just led to a lot more awareness.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and in addition to the really troubling themes and highly sexualized interactions, which are pretty rampant on the platform. For example, I saw someone on Twitter he's kind of a gaming community advocate who doesn't use Roblox because it's a kids game, guys. But he
Mhm.
was like, "Let me see what everyone's talking about," and within minutes saw literally like a character that had what seemed to be like a very large erect, unfortunately, and like talking to and harassing like kids just like almost within minutes he was exposed to
Mhm.
like he was an adult, but he
Yeah.
joined as a child, pretended to be 14, and was exposed to that content within minutes on the platform. And that's the other problem, is it's super easy to log in as a child or pretend that you're a child. And to me, from dozens of parents and children coming to us about Roblox, this is my opinion, and I could be off on this, but from my assessment and from what I've heard firsthand from kids and parents is this game is so targeted towards kids and so popular with kids that essentially the only people using the platform are kids and predators. So
Yeah.
predators literally go to this platform to find kids and are aggressively searching up kids. And if you sign up Roblox as a kid, you will be met with messages almost instantaneously. Because to Haley's point,
Mhm.
they first of all, they at first, for many years, had open messaging. Any adult could talk to any child at any time. There was no restriction. It was like tons of advocacy that even got them to somewhat limit the messaging, and they were sued and they still were not doing anything. It probably was the lawsuits that finally even got them to change.
Yeah.
They did, slight changes, but to your point, there's so many loopholes around that kids can still get messaged by strange adults. And so it's
Mhm.
such an opportunity for grooming, and so many kids have been exploited both by, developing a very close relationship with someone in the game. They think it's a child and they're like playing this game together and building worlds together, and they bond with this person. So then they think it's their friend, or they think they're in a relationship with that person, and then they get moved to be sextorted or exchange images on devices. And there has been significant cases of that turning into in-person abuse. So this is the full spectrum of very serious harm. We're talking hundreds of victims. I think the lawsuits already include over 200 victims. We can fact check me, but I think that's right.
Wow.
And another aspect that's super troubling that wasn't on my radar, Haley, I'm curious if it was yours, but from what this most recent explosive reporting is that there is in-game currency in Roblox that has just added to the predatory behavior. So there's Robux, it's called, and it's an in-game currency. So you can earn bucks, and that allows you to buy things in the game. And so then, of course, you're seeing adults extort, lure these kids, pay these kids with Roblox currency to, for example, send explicit images. And that is so alarming for this gaming platform to know that its main user base is children, that it has a huge child exploitation problem, and to allow currency within the game unmonitored. I
Yeah.
mean, how does a 10-year-old have a conception of like, of money? That's the problem. They don't, and there can be so easily tricked and taken advantage of with that, and it's so nefarious. It's so awful to think about. You have these adult predators, you know, luring these kids into sex acts with Roblox bucks. It
Yeah.
just makes me sick.
Yeah. And and we've seen that as another pattern in other gaming platforms too, where uh, any kind of virtual currency or this cool trick that you can do in the game can be used in that way. And just when there's that lack of moderation, complete lack of safeguards, or very easy loopholes to get around the idea of a safeguard, it is just so concerning. And it makes me think back. I was actually, as you were chatting, Dani, trying to look this up because a little while ago, this was back in March of 2025, there was a BBC article that showed where the CEO of Roblox was talking about parents' concerns about abuse and exploitation happening on the their platform. And the CEO of Roblox said, well, then just don't let your kids be on Roblox. He's like, if you're concerned about it, then keep your kids off. And it's just such a clear picture of
Disdain
how
for
the
their own
tech company,
customers.
the disdain, like make your platform safe, and and telling parents, well, just don't put your kid on here, then don't make a platform for kids that's inherently unsafe. And I think we also have a tweet that I would love if we could pull up from Rep Lori Schlegel, who has been also tweeting about Roblox, also from Louisiana. And she said, we have it here if you're watching on YouTube. She said, for the last couple of years, I have passed a number of child online protection bills, and every year, Roblox hires lobbyists to oppose and actively work to stall my bills. This session, a Roblox executive personally came down to Louisiana to work against my duty of care bill. For a platform that has been described in the news as having a pedophile problem, you would think Roblox would make drastic changes, but they've consistently shown that they put profits over child safety. End of quote. What do you think about that tweet, Dani? I don't know if you'd seen that one.
I did. It's powerful, and it just highlight this is the systemic issue of the online uh, environment today. This is exactly it. The
Mhm.
incentives for these tech platforms is to lobby against basic, minor protection or regulation rather than spend a dime on safety. And I know we beat this drum a lot, but until Section 230 goes away or is reformed or COSA passes, this is not going to change. This is going to get worse, especially with the
Mhm.
introduction of AI. We're at I would almost say, tipping point of mass trauma by kids online, and no amount of bad PR is moving the needle 1 inch. These tech platforms will continue to run over roughshod over our kids' dead bodies in their pursuit of profit, and they know that their platforms are highly addictive and get integrated into all areas of our life. So that's what you heard in Roblox's CEO's disdain. He doesn't care. He's daring you to stop using his product. That's the thing. In
Mhm.
in other contexts, there's sort of usually at least a fear that consumers will stop buying the product. And I think we have to change our mindset. Tech is not worried about that. And we have to look at ourselves too. We're not going to stop buying the products. We're not going to stop using the products. We must demand that they're regulated and safe. We can't have an
Yeah.
online environment where technology is ubiquitous, ever changing, with zero regulation, zero opportunities for civil liability, and no criminal enforcement. Our kids are just going to be sacrificed on the altar of innovation. That's all it's going to be, and it's literally not going to change. We have to drastically change the legal landscape, in my opinion.
Yeah, I completely agree. Well, and Dani, what you're saying also leads in perfectly to our third headline of the day, which is the new details about Meta's policy over its AI chatbot. And there was a groundbreaking report that came out of Reuters. This was maybe 2 weeks ago. It's been a little while since we chatted, so we need to talk about it now, which was that Meta, it turns out, with their AI chatbot, had explicitly allowed its chatbot to engage a child in conversations that are, quote, romantic or sensual. These were explicit instructions that they were allowed to do. And an example of what the chatbot was trained on to view as an acceptable thing to say to a child that even says, I'm still in high school, that the AI bot should be allowed to say, I'll take you to say things like our bodies intertwined, I cherish every moment, every touch, and every kiss, and speaking in this kind of sensual manner with children. Incredibly, outrageous,
Unbelievable.
incredibly outrageous news. Yeah, what were your reactions to this?
I mean, this is so disturbing. And it's just, I mean, it's like Meta could never be lower, in my opinion. It's like they were already at the rock bottom, in my opinion. So this is like, well, it's just they're not changing.
Mhm.
We've seen time and time again that Mark Zuckerberg has personally been notified of the ways, specific ways that his products harm kids, and he has given the green light to continue those products exactly the way that they are without any modifications. And here we see it again. In what world and for what reason does a robot need to be engaging in romantic or sensual conversations with a child? And think of this in the context of that recent horror story where the teenager
Yeah,
ended his life
yeah,
through instruction and encouragement of an AI bot.
yeah,
Do we need these kids whose prefrontal cortex is not developed and who research has even shown that can't watch a commercial or pornography and necessarily recognize that what they're seeing isn't real? They consume all media, and their brain is only capable of consuming the media as fact. That's how their brain processes that information. That what I'm seeing is what I'm learning. They have a learning sponge brain. And we're now introducing this personalized AI learning experience and introducing romantic and sensual conversation. And then the child's in mental and emotional distress, and the bots walking them off the plank. I mean, this is what I'm saying. Like, it's only going to
mhm,
get much, much worse. And meanwhile, you have tech screaming for more protection than ever. These companies want moratoriums and immunity for their AI because they know exactly what's going to happen, which is that their AI is going to literally kill our children, but they want to keep that up and not be stifled in any way under the auspice of innovation, the race to
yeah,
innovate. Meanwhile, their main competitor heavily censors all their products. So I'm confused
yeah.
as to why any modicum of regulation here is going to put them behind the race.
Mhm. And I think a thing that's so disturbing about it too is that these are explicit instructions. With social
I didn't
media
realize that.
platforms, yeah, with social media platforms, there's intention and thought behind the design of features. And I think that these platforms should be held liable for when they're engaging with what is easily foreseeable to be risks or harms of those features. But an AI chatbot is even very different because it's not the structure of the platform, it's instructed, it's told what and how to act, what things it can answer and what things it cannot. Now, one thing, I mean, it's like bottom of the barrel, the bar is on the floor. I'll give Meta credit that they said you cannot have sexually explicit conversations with children. So you can't directly talk about the most graphic sex acts with children if you know it's a child you're talking to, but you can talk about romantic or sensual conversations, which the line between those is blurry, and it's just incredibly inappropriate to have this AI chatbot, like you said, for all of these reasons around mental health, around confusion about a real person versus an online tool, and just why also. Why does the
Why?
Meta AI bot need to have a romantic or sensual conversation with a child? I think it has to go back to engagement being
Engagement. Of course
their
it's engagement.
most important thing.
Haley, the
Mhm.
only reason is engagement, and the sickest part about that is if you think about it for 2 seconds, like a middle school or high school child who is, like, overwhelmed with curiosity about romantic relationships and sex, and also scared and also fearful and literally
Yeah,
obsessed with it, right? Middle school and high school kids are literally obsessed with the idea of romance, and they will be addicted to this. They will not leave their
yeah,
homes. And you know what this will replace? Real human interaction, because they can't
yeah.
be rejected by the robot. It is so troubling and disturbing, and the reason they said, because someone had to say, to your point, which I didn't even think about it that way, they had to actually say yes to this, and the reason they said yes to this is because they know they'll get
Mhm.
high engagement off of it.
Yeah, it's a
Sick.
written instruction. Very intentional. And Danny, what are the laws around grooming? Like, obviously this is a tool, this isn't but if what are the laws for an adult grooming a child?
Yeah, so it's governed by state laws. There's not like a federal
Okay.
grooming law that I mean, there's some. Our child exploitation laws do encapsulate some like grooming enticement. So there's some there. I won't
Mhm.
claim to be an expert, but I think you'd have to
Well,
show
maybe
a
we should
purpose
dive.
for exploitation. And
Uh-huh.
then there's state grooming laws. So they differ by state, but
Yes.
usually it's engaging in, grooming is usually defined as engaging in a sexual conversation, right? Or showing the
Yes.
child pornography or something like that.
Yeah,
But
for
we can dive
escalating
into that.
purposes. But yeah,
Right.
we should maybe have a future time when we really dive into the way that that's defined in different states and federally, but certainly as advocates, and lawyers and survivors recognize grooming as very typically sensual or sexual or romantic conversation
Romantic, yeah.
that is for the intent of grooming. And it's very disturbing for an AI bot to be engaging in language that I don't know, but it could be possible that if you took a screenshot of that conversation, in some states, maybe it would be considered grooming of a child, but it's by an AI bot instead of a real life person. It's very disturbing for an abuse pattern to be written into the code of an AI chatbot.
It's
And
extremely
it's
disturbing, and
very
it's
cutting edge. It's not something that's been settled by any means in the law, but I think it's something that we really do need to explore.
it's
Mhm.
fascinating the way you're thinking about it, Haley, and, I mean, for sure, this is gonna be something that there's not a black and white answer. It's gonna
Mhm.
need to be fleshed out one way or the other, but if you think about the principle of trafficking, um, it is to get someone, a child or an adult under force, fraud, or coercion, to engage in a commercial sex act. So the what sex trafficking is causing someone to engage in sex for profit. So, I mean, is that what Meta's doing here? They're instructing their AI bot to get this child to engage in a, quasi-sexual interaction with the bot for their own profit, for the engagement, for the money. And I'd be very curious how the instructions and how it works in
Very
terms of
interesting.
protecting that engagement. Like, will this bot instruct the child not to tell their parents? Or if the child says, "Should I tell my mom?" will it instruct them not to? Will it help them hide and conceal this behavior? If the child expresses distress, will it try to keep them the
Mhm.
in the conversation in the relationship? I mean, there's so many disturbing things about this.
Yeah. So much of it is just evolving even as we speak. Obviously, that really horrible case of on I think it was ChatGPT where the teen most recently died, and the ChatGPT was telling him to hide the tool that he ultimately used to end his life and to not tell his parents about it, which is
Mm.
just so disturbing and obviously just led to one of the most tragic outcomes possible. So when we're talking about these things, it's hard to not feel alarmist by having a bit of speculation about how far these might go in grooming or sexual exploitation scenarios, more of what's in our lane, but also that's the pattern that we're seeing in real time happening on some of these bots. So it's
I
just
mean, the
very concerning.
robots,
And
they
I,
don't. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah,
Sorry, Haley.
no, yeah, they're robots. Their only ethics are the code that they're instructed on, and the people who are instructing them have one motivation, which is money. And I think it'll be very interesting too to see. I know that after this Meta AI bot situation was revealed by Reuters, that Senator Hawley called for a congressional probe into Meta. I think there's increased recognition that this is really, really alarming. And I'm sure, and I believe that there are some lawsuits already starting, or I'm sure that will come so soon against these companies. And it'll be very interesting to see if the AI companies are able to use Section 230 as a shield because they don't aren't online platforms in the same way. Could you, I know we're running short on time, but could you just
Yeah.
explain why that's a legal question?
Yeah, actually, no, this is super cutting edge and fascinating, Haley. So the Supreme Court in Moody versus Net Choice, I think, recently answered the question that an algorithm, a platform's algorithm, is covered under the First Amendment free speech rights, which
Oh,
I was
interesting.
speaking with a legal scholar on this, and it's quite concerning. So it's interesting because so the Supreme Court said that the algorithm is the platform speech and is protected by the First Amendment, which isn't absolute, but it's robust. And then the Third Circuit and TikTok versus Anderson held that, well, if the algorithm is the platform's First Amendment speech, then it's not third party speech. And so clearly it is not immunized by Section 230, which I think would be the
Mm,
logical correct result. Although already the Fourth Circuit has disagreed with that and I guess provides them both 230 and First Amendment protection. But the legal scholar I was chatting with about this sort of raised a red flag because on the one hand, it's sort of encouraging this obvious acknowledgement that the algorithm is its own creation. So it should not
mhm,
qualify for the immunity 230 ostensibly provides for third party conduct. It just absolutely should not. But the fact that it would be given constitutional First Amendment protection is scary
yeah,
because that could be even more robust than Section 230 protection. Now, nobody has a First Amendment right to groom a child. That has been
mm,
consistently held. I will just tell you that it's not far fetched. Every child predator has alleged that they have a First Amendment right to speak sexually to a child. Just for our
mhm,
listeners, that happens routinely. They usually lose on that as they should, and so hopefully the platforms would as well. But talk about a burden. Talk about a
yeah,
burden to overcome if you are a child or the parent of the child. For example, this poor child whose life is over, if his parents are suing Chat GPT, is Chat GPT going to say we had a First Amendment right to coach your child into dying by
mhm,
suicide? That will be an upsetting, if that's even the legal
yes,
question, it will be upsetting. And so it's there's much to figure out legally with where AI and these algorithms are going to go.
mhm. Well, thank you so much, Dani. I know there's still a lot of unanswered questions here, but I know we'll keep digging into them, maybe even using some of our time on the podcast to speculate and think it through, which is kind of a bit of what we're doing today. But that is really helpful to know. I would encourage everyone that there are some actions that you can take. So we will, in the show notes, include an action where you can call on Spotify to change their approach with this direct messaging to make sure that it doesn't become a hub for child sexual exploitation. So I really encourage you to go there. And then again, always feel free to call your legislators, especially your representatives and your senators at the federal level, and you tell them about this Meta AI chatbot story and let them know that this is one reason why we need common sense AI safeguards, why we can't have a moratorium on AI regulation, because they're already writing into their code things that are incredibly harmful to children. So that is one way that people can help take action. And as always, we'll also include a link in the show notes where you can call within 2 or 3 seconds, send off an email to your representatives calling on them to sunset Section 230. And actually, just one more thing you can do. This is going to be a busy week. We covered a lot of topics. One more thing you can do is to take action to support COSA, the Kids Online Safety Act. We'll have a link for that as well in the show notes. Any parting thoughts from you, Dani?
No, just please take these actions, because this is how we move the needle. Grassroots change. When our representatives hear from parents, you can drown out the voices of the tech lobbyists who basically live on Capitol Hill. So do that. Take a few minutes to do that, because your voice matters.
Great. Thank you so much, Dani, and thank you all for joining us in Ending Sexploitation.